If you're eating toast, then I don't know if you can qualify that as eating bread. Because it's not the same.
But is it toast just a shorthand of saying I'm eating a toasted piece of bread with some butter on it or some jam on it, but it's a toasted piece of bread?
If you
toast isn't anything
bagel,
that's not bread.
If you toast a bagel, it's still a bagel, right?
It's not toast.
But if you toast bread, it becomes toast because toast ubiquitously is known as toasted bread. That's probably even the definition of it. However, is it still bread?
Isn't this just our words for it?
This whole episode is about semantics. You applied a word to the whole episode. We can only debate the words.
I feel like we're having a healthy debate about bread.
So in English, toast is toasted bread, but bagel is bagel. In other languages, if you toast bread, I'm curious if it's a word for toast or if they just say toasted bread.
I say that if you have toast and it's just toast, you don't apply anything to it, it's still bread because it's just toasted bread. But if you put jam on it, it becomes something else because you started changing it.
What is bread if you put butter on it?
Bread and butter, that's bread and butter.
Okay, what if you butter your toast?
Buttered toast. As Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy said long ago, he declared it as something entirely different. It changed. It fundamentally changed. Just like with bread, when you put things between it and put another bread, at some point it becomes a sandwich and not necessarily just bread because it becomes something else. The whole crux of the argument is that it becomes something at some point. So you just have to define what that point is, at which you cannot say that it's bread and still not be lying.
Well, I just want to say one of the translations from English to Spanish of toast is el pan tostado, which I believe means the bread toasted.
Pan, yeah.
So I don't know how much weight that carries, but pan is bread, right? So it's the bread toasted. It's toasted bread. I would say that toast is just a shorthand in the same way that, what's a good comparison to that? Man, I should have thought of this before I started saying the sentence. If I stall long enough, I'll probably get there.
You think on it. I'll ask my question to Mark. So
yeah, go ahead.
If you butter bread or butter toast, then it's still buttered version. If you put the same exact amount of jam on bread with no butter as you would have put butter, is it something, what is that called?
You're more accurately eating bread than if you put it on toast. So if I saw you on the street and you were eating bread and jam, not toasted, and I had a gun to your head, I would not shoot you.
So the toasted bread leaves it still bread. Jam on bread is still bread, but jam on toast, something significantly changes.
Yes. That's where you get two steps in. That's a problem for me.
Okay, so more than one alteration to the bread and it's no longer bread to you.
I think that's a fair declaration because you have a bagel, you toast a bagel, it's still toasted bagel, but toasted bagel with cream cheese is something different.
What butter and salt?
Butter and salt? Yeah, you're starting down the road of sandwich. Once you go down the road of sandwich, you don't come back.
You better watch yourself out there. You're putting two things on your bread.
Is it a matter of the construction? As an example, as a counterpoint, in a lot of cultures, bread is frequently dipped, right? In olive oil mixed with herbs or olive oil with vinegar or something. If you are not spreading the toast, so you could theoretically dip bread in salt, not salt, in butter or salt, I guess. Instead of spreading it on, if you have a hunk of bread and you're dipping, it's dipping in butter, you're dipping in oil, and you're dipping the bread and eating the bread. Wouldn't you say that is basically just eating bread, but you're putting a little sauce on it? Because you're not making a sandwich.
Yeah,
it's not a sandwich.
I think that is safe territory because when you have a bread and you're dipping it in something, you're making the bread the dominant piece of the relationship. So it's not an even 50-50. It is taking control of the situation. So when you put bread in something and dipping, which is why dipping is a superior form of saucing things, as opposed to just splattering all over it. You dip, that way you maintain control and integrity of what you're dipping in.
What if you spread butter on a piece of bread and dip that in another sauce?
That's a cannoli.
That is not a cannoli.
And what's the difference between that and a cannoli?
What do you think a cannoli is? Oh my God. Do you think a cannoli is related to bread, Mark?
No, because what I'm thinking about it is a cannoli, you have a flat piece of thing, you wrap it in something. So if you were to dip bread in something, you kind of have to put some kind of a fold in.
Is?
You kind of have to put a fold in it. It's got a fold in it, rolled and then they dip it in like whipped cream on the ends or
Here's
something.
the definition of cannoli. Italian pastries in the form of hard tubular shells filled with sweetened ricotta cheese and often containing nuts, citron, I don't know how that's pronounced, or chocolate bits.
I rest my case.
A cannoli is a hard shell that you bake around a metal tube, and then when it's done, it's a tube. It's an empty tube, and then you pipe cream into it of some sort. You maybe dip the end of the cannoli in some chocolate and pistachios or something. You don't dip it in shit. A cannoli has nothing to do with this.
Either way, the comparison stands because a cannoli is not bread. And therefore, you putting something on it
But
and
what
dipping
I said
something in
wasn't
it.
a cannoli either. Spreading butter on a piece of bread and then dipping that in a sauce does not make it a cannoli.
I dare you to do it without rolling it, and you.
I think he's imagining you're rolling it up for some reason.
Yeah, you look at it after you're done dipping, and you're like, "Oh my god, I made a cannoli."
You don't need to spread butter on a flat piece of bread. You take a hunk of bread, you spread butter around it, you dip. It's still the same hunk of bread you were dipping earlier. Your argument loses weight.
You don't take a piece of bread, you hollow it out and shove bread inside so the warmth that melts it from outside in.
I mean, I do that, but that's not what I was supposing. That's just for fun.
But it's pretty close to a cannoli.
I fuck butter in bread at whenever. You know where it's good for that? The bread at Cheesecake Factory is good for that.
Yes, actually, absolutely.
You could absolutely you just make a little hole and then you just put
Cheesecake Factory, pro bread move. You put the butter, well, they changed their butter so it's actually on a plate instead of the rolls, but back when it was like refrigerated things, you stick it in between the bread pieces, and then when you get to it, it's already melted.
And you sprinkle a little salt over top. That way, when Mark puts his salt on his piece that he eats, he has a heart attack and dies.
Just because I know the truth about cannolis and you don't does not mean that I deserve death.
I don't think you know what a cannoli is at all.
I'm not Italian.
Neither am I, but I know what a cannoli is.
I don't think there's any difference between a cannoli and a hot dog, or like cannoli and bread and butter and anything like that. It's a rolled piece of bread. They all fall within. A taco is a cannoli that's sweet.
What a bold claim.
I fucking love. No, wait, I love that actually. The debate is always, wait, is a hot dog a sandwich? Blah. You know what a hot dog is, idiots? A hot dog is a cannoli.
It's a cannoli.
You're all stupid.